Welcome, May, and thank you again for joining me on this Kitchen Talk to discuss a very important topic. And I wanted to share with you and the audience why I think this topic is so important. I know you know. Um, Narcissistic abuse in relationships, particularly within faith communities and in many families, is rarely discussed. And what happens is it leaves many victims isolated and, as you know, suffering in silence. This makes it incredibly difficult for victims to articulate their experiences, as the abuser often presents a different and often charming face to the outside world. Secondly, there is a severe mental and emotional impact. Victims endure long-term psychological harm, including low self-esteem, anxiety, depression, and an inability to trust. And the constant evaluation, manipulation, and gaslighting leaves them in a constant state of hypervigilance, affecting not just their mental health, but their physical well-being. And then lastly, this topic is important because there is a huge misunderstanding of what mental and emotional abuse is. And it's difficult for some people to equate it with physical abuse, even though often there's a deeper and longer lasting effect. And believe it or not, there is still religious teachings that wives should accept physical abuse. And so I can understand why this emotional abuse would certainly not be an exception. Cultural and religious pressures guilt victims into staying in abusive marriages, reinforcing the false idea that marriage should be endured at all costs. I firmly believe, though, that God never intended marriage to be an institution of bondage, of abuse, and discard. And so, with that said, this topic is extremely important to me. So let's talk about narcissism in relationships within the context of this whole topic we're talking about. So the first question is, how would you define narcissism within relationships?
Within a relationship, if you've never encountered it before, it can be very hard to identify. But the hallmarks of it are that lack of empathy. You can be sick and dying, and if what they're doing is more important, they will leave you. They'll leave you right there and let you suffer alone. That they don't care about your feelings, your needs, your desires. It's all about them. That's one of the hallmarks of narcissism or NPD, and we need to make that clear. There is a distinction. Everyone has a level of narcissism, but NPD in relationships is extremely damaging. It's a high level of self-centeredness, and also a lot of manipulation goes on in a narcissistic relationship. A lot of brainwashing goes on in narcissistic relationships. A lot, and the emotional abuse, I think, is, you mentioned physical abuse and how we are taught that we're supposed to stay in our marriages. We're supposed to pray for our partners and, ask God to fix our marriage and be at the center of our marriage. As a Christian, I wholeheartedly believe that we should do whatever we can. But you can't fix a narcissistic marriage. You can only endure it, because they're not interested in fixing it. As a matter of fact, they don't believe anything's wrong. As long as they're able to talk to you with disrespect any way that they want to talk to you, as long as they can ignore your needs and you stay right there. They see nothing wrong with it.
It's hard to believe that. It's hard to believe that you can see someone who has a need or in pain and just not have enough compassion, to want to extend help, relieve whatever is happening in the life, especially in a relationship where you're either married or there's a long-term relationship, because you think that you've identified this, there's this bond that exists.
No, and so that's a fallacy. There is never a bond with someone who has NPD. Now, you may be bonded, but they're not bonded. You may have what they call a soul tie. They do not have it. They never truly attach. They do have a severe attachment disorder. They never really attach to anyone, that whether it's their children or their partners. They don't emotionally attach. And one of the reasons they don't emotionally attach is they cannot feel love. As a matter of fact, they think love is foolish. That's for fools.
Really?
Yeah, that's how they feel about it.
So how does one then enter into this a relationship or a covenant? There's got to be something that that attracts a person to someone in order to marry them. I mean, there's got to be some form of give and take, and something that allows you to want to enter into this relationship for the long haul. How does that form then without, well, maybe the better question is there a red flag? Is there something that should say this isn't the one? Because how does one attach to someone who appears to not have any emotion for you to attach to?
Now, are you talking about from the perspective of the potential partner or from the narcissist perspective?
From the potential partner. Let's start with that first. Yes.
That is very interesting. The thing is, narcissists are consummate actors. And when they meet you, if they deem you an appropriate candidate for marriage, they will mirror you. And they teach this in sales, by the way. Okay. They teach you that if you bond with your client, like finding mutual interests, things that you like, places that you both have been, things like that, similar values that you have in common, then that other person will be more open to you, and they will like you because you now become familiar. And I don't know how, it's instinctively, they know how to mirror you. They will pretend in the beginning that they like what you like, that they want what you want. They will pretend that they have the same values you have. And what happens is, for the target, but because they're being mirrored, they actually fall in love with themselves. They think they're falling in love with that person. But the truth is, they're falling in love with that image that that narcissist is portraying for them. And they're constructing that image to be like you.
I see.
Yes, and that's how they trick you. And that's how and you're thinking, oh, this person is wonderful. We have so many things in common. We have so many values that, we want the same things in life. This is what you fall in love with, that deception.
Interesting. Which is then why once so let me ask this question then. Is the person who is narcissistic, are they aware that they are narcissistic?
They know deep down inside, they know they're not like other people. They know something's off with them, something's wrong, but they deny it. No, and a matter of fact, and this is one of the things that one of the red flags that we often miss in the beginning.
Yeah.
They act like they're superior to everybody, superior to you. Sometimes they can be rude to service people because they have like a bit of a haughtiness, like they think they're, better than everybody else, or they're always telling you how unique they are. And almost not, sometimes they won't come out directly and say it, but they'll kind of insinuate it to you that, hey, I'm a great catch. I'm all that. You're lucky that I'm even paying you attention. Sometimes they don't say it in words, but you'll feel it. You'll sense it.
Okay, so what might be another red flag for someone who is embarking on a relationship then?
You may get a little bit of that control. I'm telling you, they're very shrewd. And they're really shrewd operators, and they know how far to go. Especially in the beginning, they're going to be very careful in the beginning not to exert too much control. And even in a marriage, sometimes they won't exert overwhelming control because they want to keep you. As long as they want to keep you, they know how to measure it. When they get to that discard stage, they don't care what you think. And
Okay.
it gets to be my way or the highway.
Okay. All right. How then does the narcissist manipulate? So let's work with manipulation. How then are they able to manipulate their victim to the level of keeping them under control? What measures, and it's still very difficult for me to even understand the mind of someone like this, because most people, I think, are very free, they're very open, they're very trusting,
Mhm.
especially when they're in a relationship and they want it to work. So
Mhm.
what does the narcissist do to manipulate in order to control the individual, whether they're married? Well, let's take the marriage situation. While they're married.
Mhm. A lot of these situations, but what you mentioned earlier, mind games. They play mind games from day one. And one of the ways that they control you is they chip away at your confidence and your self-esteem. They'll say little things like, "Oh, you don't know how to manage money. You don't know how to make good decisions." And then they watch you like a hawk. And anytime you make a mistake, which we all do, we're
Mhm.
human beings, we're going to make mistakes from time to time. They jump on it, and they beat you down with that mistake. And getting enough of that constantly, undermining your confidence, and telling you can't make good decisions, and then reinforcing it with when you do make a mistake. Aha, you made a mistake. See, I told you can't make good decisions. I told you can't manage money. And if for example, if their wife comes home and she's having issues at work, and they will all, well, what did you say? What did you do? It's almost like they turn it on you and make it your fault instead of empathizing with you. They all are looking at, well, how did you mess up?
I
And
see.
that kind of, it really messes with your confidence. And you start because we're empaths, and empaths are known for this. They
Okay.
always look within. They always look at themselves to see, well, how did I contribute to this? Or what could I have done differently to avoid this situation? Or we always look at ourselves, and they know that, and they use it against you.
So do you find then that um, the relationship between the narcissist is typically with an empath, someone who they feel they are able to control and manipulate, because they wouldn't necessarily be attracted to someone who's more like them?
Oh, I tell you, every now and then, people with NPD do end up in a relationship with someone else who has NPD. Oh, let me tell you, the sparks fly fast. It's tumultuous from beginning to end, and most of the time, it doesn't last very long.
Okay, so it's not necessarily any personality trait. It could be anyone, and it could be someone who's similar to you.
No, they look for empaths. You are just ideal for them. And like I mentioned earlier, you're ideal for them because you're always empaths are the kind of people who always want to get along with others. You're kind, you're thoughtful, you're all of those wonderful, beautiful things that, we human beings should be, but not everybody reaches that mark.
Right. So you said something interesting earlier. You said they fall in love with themselves.
It's interesting. Narcissists are, so to speak, narcissists are in love with themselves, and you fall in love with yourself when
Okay.
you think you're falling,
Okay. All right.
when you think you're falling in love with them. But the thing is, now we think, because everybody's heard of the story of Narcissus. I think the Greek uh, uh, god that fell in love with himself and
Yes.
couldn't love anybody else.
Yes.
But so we think of narcissists as just loving themselves because they're stuck on me all the time. But the truth is, if deep down under all of that, they don't love themselves. They don't know they don't know what love is, and they don't want to know. They reject love. And as such, they reject God because God is love. But in their minds, in their distorted minds, it's like, I am God.
Okay, so let's break that down a little bit. So you said that they don't know how to love. Why?
They've chosen not to. At a very early age, they rejected love. And when you reject love, you reject God. Because as I said, God is love. And that is they feel that loving someone is foolish, it's dangerous, and they're not doing that. They're not going to allow someone to get that close to them, to be able to possibly hurt them. No way are they opening themselves up to that. That's why you never ever get to know these people. Even though you may feel like you love that person, they're a stranger. You may have had 10 kids with this person, and they're still a stranger because there is no real intimacy. To have real intimacy, you have to uncover yourself, so to speak, emotionally. You have to let that other person see your scars, your weaknesses, your desires. You have to be real with them. A narcissist is never real. They're never open and vulnerable. They will never let you get that close.
So then my question to you is, when does this develop? Could it have been a bad relationship that they've decided that, this love thing isn't for me? Was it formulated earlier in childhood? Or, where does this come from that you would reject love? And then I don't even want to get to rejecting God piece, because I mean, that's hard enough to believe that anyone would. But where did this start? Was it a bad relationship? Was it something that happened during their childhood?
No, NPD causes bad relationships. By the time a person is 18 years old, if they're NPD, it's solidified. It's etched in stone. You're not going to change it. It's who they are. But we're all shaped by relationships. Children are shaped by relationships. Their experience from people in relationship to people. And yes, this is what forms NPD. Now, it could be that they were rejected as children, and they say to themselves, you know what? I got rejected. They didn't love me, so I'm never going to love anybody else. And they shut down. They shut themselves off to love. Or maybe they were in a household where they loved their parents very much, and the parents rejected them, or the parents physically abused them, or the parents demeaned them, or if they had a narcissistic parent that didn't meet their needs. There are many, many reasons that a person can develop NPD, but it's more complicated than that, because there are a lot of people who experience all those things and never develop NPD.
Yeah.
They do say that there's like a NPD gene.
Mm-hmm.
They've done research and found that there's something near the pineal gland in the brain that and they call it like not gene, they call it the empathy gland. That's not the real name for it, but that's what people in my field called it. It's the empathy gland, and it's shrunken. It's not as developed as it is in a normal person who has empathy.
So you've addressed the question that I had earlier about, how are you attracted to someone that obviously is unable to love or to give you the affection, the attention, all of that you need to enter into a normal, healthy relationship. And you've answered the question about, does someone know they have NPD? It's still hard for me to grapple with this. So let's move then into the faith and spirituality realm. So the first question that I had for you, which I think you've already answered, is, can believers have NPD?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, the church is full of people with NPD. Yeah, they say with their mouth they believe in God. They believe in all the scriptures and all those things. But many of them are what they call, what's the word for it? You probably know it better than me. Oh, there is a name for it. It's a certain kind of carnal Christians.
Okay.
They go to church to be seen. They go to church to manipulate people's perceptions of them. They want people to think that they're good people. And that is exactly what people will assume. They will assume that people who go to church, who claim to be Christians, are good people.
Sure.
Nothing could be further from the truth.
Okay. So this question I've got to ask, because there's this thought, and it's scriptural, that the question is, how can two walk together except they agree? And then the Bible tells us that we should not be unequally yoked. So if you're married to someone who has NPD and you are unable to have a normal, healthy relationship, what does that mean? When you look at scripture and you look at, you're supposed to be able to walk in agreement, and you're supposed to be able to love and to build and to advance the kingdom, what does that do? What does that look like in a marriage? are you equally or are you unequally yoked with a believer?
If that person has NPD, you are absolutely unevenly yoked. Absolutely. You can't build anything with someone with NPD. They are innately destructive. They're destroyers. They're not builders. And the longer you stay with them, the more completely they will destroy you. And I'm telling you, I was reading the other night about what book was that? It said something about the wicked they can't sleep until they've done something evil. And that's the way people with NPD are. Unless they've done something slick behind your back that you don't know about, or done something to negatively affect your self-esteem, they can't rest. They cannot rest. They can't have peace unless they have done something evil. And if you are a really God-fearing Christian, you cannot be evenly yoked with somebody like that.
What does it say about, and I know that NPD is not just experienced by men, it can also be experienced by women. So the question then is, what do you do when you're in a situation and you're married to someone who professes to be a Christian, and you feel trapped? Because if you're in church, if you are a Christian, you're taught that you do whatever you can to remain married. And there are a few exceptions for you to not remain married. This is not a topic that people are familiar with. And unless you're experiencing it yourself, it's difficult to describe.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do? What does a victim do, whether they're male or female?
Sadly, and I've seen it, and I'm seeing it as we speak. There are Christian women who stay in these kinds of marriages and suffer. They absolutely suffer. Their health is being destroyed. Their self-esteem is in the toilet, but they stay in it because they do feel if they leave, then they're disobeying God. That is not true. Paul tells us when you identify evil, you are supposed to distance yourself from it. And he also tells us don't put store by what man thinks. Don't fear man. It's all about being pleasing in the sight of God. God, he knows everything. He sees it all. He knows that person's heart. He knows their character. He knows every deception that they have engaged in. Likewise, he knows your heart. He knows that you went into it with believing a lie from the very start. I don't believe our God would turn his back on us or close the door to the kingdom because we left somebody that was a deceiver, a liar, and an evildoer when he has told us to distance ourselves from evil.
Do you believe that individuals with NPD use religion as a tool?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yes, they do. They do it because, like I mentioned earlier, we make we're so, you know what, in a way, we human beings are lazy. We look at people by how they dress, how they speak. We're so shallow, and we just assume that everybody sitting in the church is good.
Mhm.
They know that. That's why you find many of them gravitate towards the church, and many of them are even in the pulpit speaking the word every Sunday and going home and mistreating their families, especially their wives, because these people, especially the men of the cloth who have NPD, they feel like they're God. They're God on earth. And women are meant to serve them. You're meant to be subordinate to them and subservient to them. But yes, they use the church, and not just men, women too. They use the church because, and they know people in the church are, I hate to say it, but very gullible. Because especially the people that are there, you know, with an open heart and really there to try to live right.
Mhm.
We believe that the person sitting next to us is
Sure.
there for the same thing. That
Yes.
they're there because they're wanting to live right. They're wanting to be pleasing in the sight of God. Because and we're very afraid to judge someone else.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. And so that adds another layer to why we are more accepting and we're more forgiving. I mean, we take the words of Scripture, forgiving and accepting, and what that does is it just prolongs the inevitable. Because, as you said earlier, we want for relationships to work,
Mhm.
and so we do whatever it is that's necessary to make it work.
Mhm.
But you said earlier that those who suffer from this, I don't know if you would consider it a disease, but they're not likely to change because they've got to recognize that there is an issue, that
And
they need to change.
yeah, yeah, they absolutely will not change because they're in such deep denial that anything is wrong. They tell themselves that they're perfect, and they're so good at twisting things. Like, and sometimes they can make you believe that you're at fault because and their minds are almost like computers. Every mistake you made, every wrong thing you said, they can regurgitate and throw it back at you, you know, and that can make you start feeling like, oh, yeah, I am less than perfect, and we all are. And they'll tell you in a minute, you're not perfect. You're not perfect. You know better than me.
Mm.
But they use it against you.
So, what does the victim? Um, well, before we get to that, what effect? You've touched on it earlier, but what is the victim going through? What are they experiencing? Um, those who you know of, tell me about their life, what their life is like living under these conditions.
Ooh,
What's life like for them?
you know what? It's so sad when you're in a relationship with a marriage with a narcissist. They make you live a lie too. You're living a lie too, especially once you've figured it out, or you know that, hey, this is not working. This is not good for me. And the longer you stay, the more you live that lie. But see, in the beginning, you go into it openly. You know, you're believing, you're being deceived, and you believe in that person. You're living a lie, but you don't know it. But when God takes the scales off your eyes and you continue to stay, you're willingly living a lie.
Well, not necessarily, because for some people, and I'm not disagreeing you, but for some people, they may not see it as living a lie, right?
You know,
because they say, this is for better or worse.
well, and it's worse, and you know it. And you go sit up in church next to that person and you act like everything is okay, that you're just fine. That's living a lie. When you know deep down inside, this person has no respect for you. They don't care about you. There's no real love there. There's no real, you're living together, but there's no real marriage. And I know a lot of women, and I have clients who stay in it. They know it's not right, but they're staying in it because and sometimes it's real, sometimes it's not. They feel like they cannot leave that person because they feel like they can't take care of themselves financially, and sometimes they can't. So they stay in misery rather than seek some way out. It's amazing. We get used, human beings can get used to anything. And we can get used to being abused. We can, we can get used to all kinds of horrible conditions. And in our minds will be, and I've heard this, and you probably heard, it's better the devil you know than the devil you don't.
Yeah.
And that's what the devil's going to play in your mind to keep you trapped. And it is scary. And I'm not minimizing this because it's very scary for women who don't have the education and the earning ability to step out on their own. That's a very scary prospect. And even scarier today because all the safety nets are being shredded.
Right. That's true. How are women who stay in this marriage, how are they coping?
By being ostrich. They stick their head in the sand. They think that they're ignoring. They tell themselves, and they'll tell the narcissist, you know what? I could care less about what you say, what you think, do whatever you want. They try to ignore what is happening. And they'll even tell themselves, you know what? I don't need love. I can live without love. They brainwash themselves. It's amazing. You get brainwashed by them in the beginning and you brainwash yourself in the end to stay.
What about women who leave? Where do they find the courage to do that?
Where do you find the courage to do that? I feel like I can't speak for everybody. Everyone is different. But for me, it was the word of God. He said he would never forsake us. He would never leave us. He said he would supply all our needs. And if you believe that, you truly believe that, then you know it may be hard, it may be rough, but he's going to open doors for you. He'll some way, somehow, he will make a way for you. He's there. He carried you through all that mess, and he'll carry you when you get out of it.
It takes courage to make any huge step, regardless of what it is. And of course, you're not going to advise anyone, especially not on this talk show. But for those who may be listening, is there any, other than what you've said, any other way for them to cope if they choose to stay?
I would say definitely you need a relationship with a therapist who is versed in narcissistic abuse. As you mentioned earlier, not everybody understands this. And many times people going through it had no place to turn. Family members don't understand. Friends don't understand because they're looking at, all they see is that fake image that the narcissist has constructed for them. And all they see is the good guy. And they think, oh my goodness, how can you even think of leaving someone like that? He's a God-fearing man, he's a Christian, he's a good provider, they've never heard him say anything mean or curse or they're very careful about that image they have in the community that they show the outside world.
Yeah.
So it can be very difficult because there's no one to talk to about it, except other survivors and therapists who treat people who've gone through it. So you definitely need a support system. And before we end, because I've been meaning to do this before and I never did it.
Yes.
And I know this is a shameless plug, but my book is Face to Face with Evil, the Christian and the Covert Narcissist. I would recommend this to anybody who's in a narcissistic relationship or suspects that they are. It'll help you determine if you are or if you aren't.
All right, I'll make sure that gets on the Facebook page. But before we do close, I can't quite understand this image and why it's so important. And I know you've probably said it before and you already touched on it, but it is important, and it is a face that the public sees. Why is it so important? And why is it such a fester for the victim? What is it that keeps that that's so important for the individual with NPD? Why is that so important? And why does it cause so much consternation for the victim?
Because you know the truth. You know that it's fake. You know that it's not real. And you want everybody else to see what you see. It's like, hey, can't you see this person is tricking you? He's fooling you. This is not who he is. Wake up. You got to, but they can't see it. They can't see it.
Why is it so important, though?
Does
it speak to something that might be lacking? I'm
lacking in them.
Yes,
absolutely. They don't know who they are. They have never done the work to find out, but they have put everything into constructing this fake image, this mask that they wear. That means everything to them. They've been working on this mask since they were little kids. And don't you mess with their mask. That if you want to really have them come after you, mess with their mask. Try to get people to see the truth.
Really?
It's everything to them. It is everything. And they believe that mask is real. They believe it's the real them. It's not.
So for years, they've constructed this person, this persona, and they won't let anything destroy it.
No, sir. They will, if you tell people he's not like that at home or what, and they will be more convincing than you any day. If you tell people this is not the real them, they can go behind you and undo everything you said and actually make it, oh, she's the one that has the fake image. If you just saw and heard the things that I've heard, you would know that's not the real her. They're good at projecting their dirt onto you, their shortcomings onto you. And you come out looking like you're the bad guy, or you're the one that's lying to people about who you are.
Okay. All right. I don't think that I'll ever be able to fully understand the mind of someone with NPD. And it saddens me that this illness, it is an illness, correct? It is an illness.
Yeah.
It exists, and it's been able to ruin the lives of so many people. I just want to talk before we end about emotional and physical abuse. And I want the audience to understand that emotional abuse is significant. You don't see it as you would with someone who's been beaten, but the wounds are just as real. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, they are just as real. And as you said at the opening, they can last a lifetime. The wounds going through this will forever change how you trust. You won't trust the way you did in the beginning, because now you know evil exists. And I believe this emotional abuse that people with NPD inflict on their partners is worse than physical abuse. If someone slaps you, you feel that pain and you know they just hit you. But with emotional abuse, it leaves you wondering, did they mean that? And it leaves you thinking, did I do something for them to come at me like that? It's internal, and you will carry those internal wounds to a certain extent for the rest of your life. Now you know evil exists, and there's no mistaking it. But do you get what I'm saying? When
Yes.
someone hits you, you know they meant to hit you.
Yes.
But when someone is emotionally abusing you, it always leaves you wondering. And sometimes you explain it away, or you blame yourself and all of this. But when somebody hits you, you know they hit you and they meant to do it.
Yeah.
That's what makes it worse. And when someone gives you a black eye or knocks out your tooth, you sign a complaint on them. If people understand that, yeah, if he was beating on you, then yeah, you have to be safe. But they don't understand that you can be very unsafe with someone who is constantly diminishing you, tearing you down.
And tearing you down can take many forms.
Yes. Yes.
Diminishing one's value can take many different forms.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you can do it they're good at it. They can do it with a look. That, when they look at you and all of a sudden you feel like, gee, I see hatred in their eyes. What did I do to deserve that? Why is he looking at me like he hates me?
Yeah. Any final closing remarks?
Well, I'm hoping that this information will help someone out there. And There are domestic violence shelters. There's a national domestic violence hotline. It is readily available on the internet. And there are therapists out there, and though few and far between, that do specialize in narcissistic abuse. Even if you suspect, if you're questioning that maybe this person has NPD, please find out. Get with a therapist and find out, because damage is being done. And I've actually seen women die from being in a narcissistic relationship. It's dangerous.
So it's the emotional abuse that wears on the physical.
Yes. I don't know if your listeners know this. More women die from domestic violence from their partners than die in car accidents each year. That's just physical abuse. I'm talking about murder. More women die from being murdered by their partners than get killed in auto accidents every year. That's just in the United States. But those women who die from the emotional abuse and the toll that it takes on them, living in an extremely high level of stress, like living in a concentration camp, they die, and those numbers are not even calculated.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Thank you. Go ahead. Yes, was there something else?
No, that's it. But thank you once again, Rhonda, for inviting me. I really appreciate it. I'm so sorry we lost some time in the beginning with technical issues, but hopefully if we do it again, we won't have issues.
Yes. Thank you so very much. I appreciate your patience. And as always, all of the information that you share. And I do hope that those who do watch are insightful, that this has been insightful, that you will be much more sensitive to those who may be around you that you may suspect. My prayer is that you'll have more of a discerning spirit in terms of those who are in your presence. And, I just wanted to share something also. I have been in church for a very long time. And one of the things that I pray for often is that the people of God would have a discerning heart, because there are often men and women in our presence who are suffering from physical and emotional abuse. And we walk by them, every Sunday or every Wednesday, and there's a cry for help. And yet we are just so busy in our own lives, doing our own thing, that we walk right by them and never think that they need prayer or they need a word of encouragement. So I'm hoping that, we'll take the time to be more prayerful and ask God for more of a discerning spirit, because there is a cry for help. And I'm hoping we might be the one that will step in and provide, if not the therapy they need, but at least the prayer and support and love and patience that we so desperately need, especially given the times we're living in.
Yes, yes.
Thank you so very much, and we'll talk soon.
Okay.
This is RB's Kitchen Talk. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.